Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Cradle News Roundup, coming to you live. My name is Esteban Carrillo. I am the news editor for the Cradle, and as usual, I'm joined by my colleagues, content creator and writer for the Cradle, Karim Shami, and columnist and editor for the Cradle, Sharmin Narwani. And before we start, please, just the usual request: make sure to hit that like button as soon as you arrive to this stream. We need to get this video out to as many people as possible, and hitting that like button just tells the YouTube algorithm this is something more people might enjoy. So please help us out with that. Of course, subscribe to our channel, check out the memberships here on the YouTube channel, and above all, in the description underneath this video, you can find the link to our Patreon page where you can become a direct supporter of the Cradle. We are currently doing a Patreon drive. We hope to reach 5,000 Patreon subscribers by the end of the year to help the Cradle stay afloat and, of course, stay independent as we are and we have been since our very beginning. So yeah, thank you to everyone who's here. We have to start talking about Lebanon again, of course, as the title of this stream says. Israel has unleashed some very vicious attacks over the past several hours, in particular, a very violent drone strike on civilians that were essentially sleeping out on the street in the middle of the night in a very popular, a very dense area of Beirut. Is the beachfront of Beirut. If you Google an image of Beirut right now, more likely than not, you're going to get the images of exactly this area in which they have killed over a dozen civilians. Like I said, people who have been displaced from their homes who were sleeping out on the street. So yeah, go ahead, guys. Give us your thoughts, please.
This is an upscale area. These apartments don't go for less than $1 million. With beachfront views and the location in Ras Beirut. So it's kind of extraordinary, and I just feel like this is the way it's moving. I mean, right now, I was hearing today that people, displaced people who had money and paid for apartment rentals are being kicked out because the Israelis are now targeting buildings where displaced people are settling because they're Shia.
It's, I think, Karim, why don't you give us an update on the situation on the ground? Because today there was also some very heavy airstrikes in Lebanon as well, some targeted assassinations.
Yes, exactly. So what happened in the past 24 hours is that Hezbollah increased their operation against the Israelis. And the Israelis, of course, they went crazy in the south and they bombed right and left. But the missiles fired from Lebanon and the projectiles and guided missiles are still being sent from South Lebanon to the border and into Israeli targets, for instance, in Naharaya and in Kiryat Shmona and in other places. And of course, because Israel couldn't retaliate militarily, the only way they retaliated is to target new places which were considered safe in Lebanon. And of course, they targeted displaced people, as you and Sharmin talked about at the beginning of the episode. They targeted Ramat al-Bayda. It's like, as Sharmin described it, it's the only public beach in Beirut. The rest you have to pay to go there. So many people felt that Israel will retaliate, for instance, or will bomb like different places in Beirut in retaliation of what Hezbollah launched yesterday night. The fact was completely opposite. What they did is they bombed a very safe and, as Sharmin said, rich area where displaced people were at the beach, and around 15 to 16 people are killed, and most of them are families. Yani, a mother with 2 kids, like a father with his family. That's what happened yesterday. And also they attacked the Lebanese university, and they killed a doctor, 2 doctors, and one of the doctors was the head of the research center in the Lebanese university. And also, so this is also a new thing that Israel did that was today. They assassinated a Lebanese scientist, and alongside with him, a doctor died also.
I think we posted an image, right, of them. Maybe we can put it on screen.
Yeah, I'm coming to it. And also they targeted Aramoun also more than once yesterday, which is also considered like usually when they target this, they might release a statement, but they didn't. People were shocked to hear the Israeli strikes there. And also today they targeted two big buildings in the heart of Beirut. And they said that they are like infrastructure for Hezbollah. And I can assure you that every single person who lives in Beirut passes through these buildings. They have shops. You go inside the shop. Now they are terrorizing the Lebanese and making the public pay because they can't make Hezbollah pay. So this is one of the buildings. It's in the heart of Beirut.
It's right in the heart of Beirut.
Yeah, and it was a very a good structured building. They made more than one strike on the building, and it remained standing. These are the two doctors. Two professors have been killed following an Israeli strike near the Faculty of Science at the Lebanese University in Hadath. Among the victims, Dr. Murtada Srour, regarded as one of Lebanon's leading physics experts, and Dr. Hussein Bazzi. So that's what's happening in Lebanon, and Israelis are still bombing Dahi, of course, and bombing many places in the south, and they issued a new warning for the people that are still in the south. They are like telling them, you are forced now to leave the area. And of course, in the Israeli media, they are saying that, for instance, this building is not so far also from my home. It was bombed. So they are saying in the Hebrew media, there's a lot of talks that the Israelis might invade, big scale invasion. Although many Israeli analysts also they say that this is inappropriate. We can't like invade a country as a retaliation. They need to have plan. But of course, we know the administration, of Netanyahu and Trump. They just want to keep the wars on for their own sake, and especially what happened yesterday. Trump also, in a speech, asked Herzog, the president of Israel, to pardon Netanyahu. In the middle of war, they are killing all these people.
He called them pathetic and a disgrace, and this is the second time he refers to him like that. Yeah.
So this tells you that this is a big issue, maybe to stop the war. Netanyahu wants a pardon from the president of Israelis to stop his wars, because if he stops the wars, he has to go to the court and money. So that's what's happening in Lebanon. It's escalating by the hour, and unfortunately, many civilians died also in the south. We have one strike that killed a family of 7 members. We have yesterday also like small facilities where you make concrete. Also, a big family, a Syrian family, was killed, around 15 people. And also they are targeting motorcycles, and apparently some of the motorcycles they are targeting, also they are not part of Hezbollah. They killed more than one Syrian in the past 3 days that are riding motorcycles. So they are bombing left and right. And as I said, and as it is clear, they don't have military banks to target banks anymore. They are starting with the civilians, because for 15 months they bombed Lebanon every day. They bombed Lebanon according to official numbers that I think they are lower than the fact. The official numbers say that Israel bombed Lebanon or made an operation inside Lebanon in the past 15 months 3,000 times and more.
That's way too low. That's way too low. There's it's actually over 10,000.
Exactly. And also I want to mention one thing, what's happening, also the escalation also in Iraq yesterday. What is believed to be an Israeli plane bombed the Iraqi Syrian border, and they killed 35 people from the PMU in one strike. And also today they bombed Baghdad, and previously they bombed Babel and other places in Iraq. And of course, we said the facts now. We have to talk about the governments. What the Lebanese government did today, they asked or they summoned the Iranian ambassador to Beirut to talk to him because what's happening is unacceptable, according to the government that had 15 months to resolve this issue, and they failed. And also, the Iraqi government said that they will not sit without action to stop such like outlaws from targeting their neighbors. So,
Karim, I want to ask you something else too about Lebanon. Do you mind if we go back actually to our screens right now? Because I heard earlier, I saw it being shared that there might be a new statement from the head of the Lebanese armed forces, who has famously said before that he's not going to allow the Lebanese army to be essentially sparking a new civil war, by trying to forcibly disarm Hezbollah. There were some reported comments from him earlier today that said kind of, like the same thing. Have you heard anything about this? Do you think this is actually, is this true, these reports?
for me, they are not true. They are like social media posts, not more.
You haven't seen anything?
I'm seeing political journalists commenting on the stuff, like serious political journalists.
I saw that as well, so that's why I asked, because it's obvious that the Lebanese army is under a very intense pressure, in particular by this very slavish government currently in power, to, essentially go to war with Hezbollah in the name of Israel.
Yeah, exactly. And the Iraqis and the Syrians are ready. The Iraqi government is also ready to fight the PMU, as I am hearing from their statements. And also the Syrians, they are waiting for a signal maybe to enter to Iraq or to see or to Lebanon, because now they are so empowered. In Lebanon, the president of Lebanon, Joseph Aoun, empowered the Syrians. He's been talking to Sharia more than once, and they released like a statement from Lebanon and from Syria. And of course, 3 times Ahmad Sharia affirmed that he stands with Lebanon and he supports the government decision to disarm Hezbollah, although we are in the middle of a war. And also in the Iraqi-Syrian border, because also we know that yesterday the PMU and the Iraqi resistance, they released a very powerful statement threatening Syria and Sharia and his gang. If you are thinking of doing anything inside Lebanon, we will fight you in the east. What happened today is that the Israelis bombed the border and they killed people that are usually there to monitor the border. So also the Israelis and the Americans, of course, they are empowering Sharia in both sides. But for me, I think the final decision will be from Erdogan. It's not. I don't think Sharia has the ability to take such a decision at these times.
What do you think, Sharmeen, about the latest the situation in Lebanon as it is right now?
I mean, the Lebanese, the commander-in-chief of the Lebanese army has no right to attack Lebanese. This is, and you will find that officers in the Lebanese army will not do so. And you could have some kind of an uprising within the army if there's orders given to do such a thing. Now, just worth mentioning, I think I have mentioned before that Joseph Aoun, the current president, U.S.-backed president of Lebanon, U.S.-installed president of Lebanon, basically when he was commander of the army in 2019, when the October Revolution was going on in the streets, the financial sectors had basically shut down and were not returning depositor money, etc. He refused to take any actions. He was asked to take actions against these protesters by the at the time, Lebanese president, another Aoun, Michel Aoun, and he would not do so, even though it was suspected that many of the protesters were, potentially part of a US-backed color revolution type movement, because it was exactly the same time that this was happening in Iraq. Okay, it felt like it was no coincidence. And Joseph Aoun at that time refused. He refused to for the Lebanese army to target Lebanese civilians in any capacity. So he can hardly object when the new commander of the LAF is saying no, especially when these directives are coming from the Americans and Israelis. That's what they'd like to see. We know for a long time that the Israelis have tried to spark civil war in this country. And if Joseph Aoun pushes this forward, he will be the person presiding over the second Lebanese civil war, and that's how it'll go down in history.
Very well put. That is very true. I think we actually talked about it yesterday in the podcast, right? The attack that actually unleashed this brutal response. I don't know if there's any more updates that we can give about the situation in Lebanon. As we said, I think at this point is about 800,000 people displaced, closing into 1 million. Yeah. And Israel has obviously moved to a new phase that is taking everyone by surprise. Like every Lebanese person I talk to, it's a bit, surprised about just how deeply now they are just willing to go and bomb. Like the promise of what's his face, Bezalel Smotrich, saying we're going to turn Dahia into a new Khan Yunis, or last year when they were saying we're going to turn Beirut into a new Gaza. I mean, there's only one force currently trying to stop that, it seems.
I'm just sort of quoting a bit from a Lebanese account, a popular Lebanese account on Telegram, which is also saying that the Israeli army has expanded its evacuation threats to north of the Litani River towards the Zahrani River, and that these evacuations are meant to create kill zones and to hunt members of the Lebanese resistance, disregarding any safety mechanisms for civilians. I mean, what the Israelis are doing now is kind of taming and grooming Lebanon to accept and expect targeting of its Shia citizens who make up to 40% of Lebanon's population, okay? To make that palatable, to make that a new normal. But what the rest of Lebanon doesn't understand is that Israel will flatten everything, okay? It's kind of like this impotent rage. And as it, in my view only, okay, as it takes a beating from Iran geopolitically and maybe even militarily, it will unleash this rage on Lebanon, because Lebanon has now become Israel's punching bag in the way Gaza had been for 2 decades, and how Syria has become. And the Israelis have never quite gotten over their, the perception of their defeat in 2006, and have been frustrated and impotent for 18 years until they could unleash now. And then the horror of everything the prime minister and the current Israeli government has been saying over the last year, that Hezbollah is defeated, to then see the Lebanese resistance rise up and hit back so hard and impede movements in Lebanon. I mean, another thing I was reading today is that Israel's military is saying that they're not in favor of launching a full invasion of Lebanon. We saw them trying to invade, right? But the military is saying it might be a more realistic option once the war with Iran dies down. But to be honest, it could be a very different region when that war is over.
The Times of Israel just published 20 minutes ago a statement from the Israeli army saying that they have sent ground troops further into Lebanon, and they have, quote unquote, destroyed Radwan force sites. That is what the Israeli media is reporting right now. We'll have to see if that pans out.
Saying, I mean, look at what Trump is saying. Look at what the Israelis are saying. They're all hiding casualties. They're all hiding damage. There's not. I can understand why people are thinking that Iran's taking and the Lebanese resistance are taking brutal beatings, because they show their damage. Why does the other side not show? Can we put up that headline, Karim, from Haaretz that Esteban posted in our
it's an image. I don't know if let me know if you can find it. Let me tag you in it. In the meantime, just very quickly, let me ask people to hit that like button, please. Also, who was it? Timothy something just put a very funny comment. I had to hold myself from cracking up. Here it is. I'm gonna tag you, Karim, so you can put it, because Iran has markedly stepped up its attacks against Israel, and there's also, there's people on the while Karima finds that image. I've seen some accounts, some social media accounts that have essentially grabbed the headlines, from the end of the 12-day war, and then like from the past couple of weeks, and it's like Israeli media in particular saying Iran has only 100 launchers left. Iran has only 150 launchers left. Then they have been like regurgitating the same headline now for like over 6 months now, and this is what happened. This is from the Haaretz homepage, actually, in which they determined that over the past several hours, 11 Iranian cluster missiles penetrated Israeli airspace, and at least one of them dropped 70 bombs over central Israel, which makes it, even wilder to consider that we have essentially no footage of any damage in Israel, or like, very little of it.
Yeah, so I thought this headline was important to put up because it is the Hebrew press that is saying these things. They won't let any images show. I think Netanyahu's gonna take Haaretz offline.
They've already been trying for a while now.
They have been trying for a while. They're saying they're like being treacherous during a period of conflict for Israel. But in fact, how can Israelis know to react? How can the world know to react when nothing is being reported in Israel? Haaretz, of course, does give reports that sort of the pro-Netanyahu right-wing media won't, and this has been a constant thorn in the side of the right-wing cabinet. But this is an important headline. So we may not see pictures, but we're being told by Haaretz that 11 cluster missiles penetrated, and we know that each of them have the capability of shooting off 80 different explosive devices of their own.
And this is thanks to the degradation of the radar system, right? The eyes and ears of the U.S. Across the region. Karim, do you have any thoughts about these quote-unquote penetrations?
No, hopefully we will see more of them.
Karim, straight succinct and to the point. I gotta love that.
Yeah, honestly, because of my monitoring, till now, unfortunately, Israel didn't take like a big hit as the first day. Till now, the first day is the biggest hit. And maybe Hezbollah and Iran, they are working something militarily, because what's happening now is that Iran is firing 1 or 2 missiles, not like before, more than 1 missile. And Hezbollah is also joining. For instance, yesterday,
they've been coordinating, right? That's what they said.
Yeah, yesterday was the first official statement issued by the IRGC, and it including Hezbollah, that it was a joint military operation against Israel.
It's very important. That's very important to note. Before we move on, I just want to mention very quickly that the Lebanese Health Ministry, their most recent update, they say 687 people have been killed by the Israeli aggression, and nearly 1,774 have been injured. That is, of course, on top of the nearly 800,000 who have been displaced. Lebanon currently going through a very difficult situation. I don't know, we can move on, I guess, from this topic, because there's something else, that happened yesterday that I know, Sharmeen, you want to talk about. Of course, it's the UN Security Council vote that was in which a Bahrain drafted resolution was approved condemning Iran, and only Iran, about the current war, and in particular, with a focus on the Gulf, on the retaliatory attacks that they have launched against U.S. and Israeli assets in the Gulf. It passed by 13 votes with 2 abstentions, the same 2 abstentions as when the Gaza Board of Peace got its approval from the UNSC, and of course, I'm talking about Russia and China. Charmaine, without much further ado, give us your thoughts, give us what you know about this vote yesterday.
Well, I think, of ye of little faith. I want to talk about this because we're always hearing, we've heard this since the Gaza war began. Where's Russia and China? Where's Russia and China? And I really hate to be in the position constantly to have to defend them. It's not that I defend them. I just try to make people understand that,
put things into perspective, I guess.
Yeah, there's both these countries really do operate on the basis of strategic ambiguity. They don't want to get caught up in conflicts. They're not like the Americans. You folks are so trained by the Americans to expect big powers to act in any part of the globe. You know, if the populations generally think there's a right and wrong in that situation, that is not what big powers should be doing. The UN Charter forbids it. Okay, just because the Americans do in every inch of the globe doesn't mean that the Russians and Chinese have any inclination. Let me say that for starters. However, you know, the nature of geopolitics and the increasing aggression that the Americans are using to come at any adversaries or even potential adversaries in any part of the world, you know, even places that aren't adversarial, like Greenland and Panama and Canada, correct? So obviously, great powers will act in some way. Sometimes it is just a veto. Sometimes it is mostly it's through diplomacy and soft power, not militarily, you know. So what happened yesterday is that the UN Security Council received 2 draft resolutions. As Esteban outlined, one of the draft resolutions was presented by Bahrain on behalf of the other 5 members of the GCC and Jordan. Okay, before this even went to the UN Security Council, like, you know, where all the members were sitting around and giving their speeches, the Bahraini resolution had already managed to amass at least 85 co-sponsorships from 85 member states. So it was clearly in the lead. All right. So the Bahraini resolution basically condemns Iran strikes. It misses the whole part about Iran being attacked by the US and Israel altogether. Okay. And starts from a point later in which Iran retaliates against US military targets in its neighborhood. All right. So it starts with no context. It goes straight to Iran's aggressions in the Persian Gulf region and, you know, with Jordan. And it basically condemns any actions or threats by Iran, any targeting of Iran, of anything in any of these countries, and also condemns Iran's efforts to close or obstruct international navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. It does not mention the US-Israeli aggression at all. It doesn't mention what started all of this. The other draft resolution was written by the Russians, okay, and presented by the Russians. It was shorter and much more general. It doesn't mention individual countries. The draft text tries to, you know, address maybe everyone's issues without upsetting anyone, you know, sort of like a win-win draft, as opposed to American-backed drafts that are zero-sum, right? And it mourns the tragic loss of life through the ongoing hostilities in West Asia and urges all parties to immediately stop their military activities and refrain from further escalation, and to avoid civilians and civilian infrastructure, and encourages all parties to return to negotiations with any further delay and used soft power to resolve this. Okay. Bahrain gets immediately, it has all these co-signers and has 13 members of the Security Council, all right, vote in favor. The Russians and Chinese, who had deliberations with Bahrain and the Arab countries before the vote, okay, and tried to get them to be more, you know, more logical, because by the way, before these were voted on, the American ambassador got to speak, American officials, the Iranian officials, other officials. Iran did, you know, very, very explicitly explain that we were attacked from nowhere, and we had warned, we will target American targets anywhere, and we will respond in kind. So all of that was ignored. The UN Security Council, blame the other 13 countries, if you will, voted in favor of this, and you have to have 9, right? You have to have 9 and no vetoes in order for a resolution to go through. They did then, so China and Russia abstained. The Russian draft was also heard. China expressed support for the Russian draft, but other Security Council members argued that the Council should focus on the draft text proposed by the affected regional countries, therefore Bahrain. Russia simply did not get enough votes for this to make it. Okay, I think it maybe got 5 votes or something like that. So the Russians and Chinese did try to put their points of view forward. But don't forget, Russia's a heavily sanctioned country. And, for the last 4 years, and the UN Security Council is kind of puppeteered by the Americans with threats of all kinds behind the scenes. So why didn't Russia and China outright veto this? Because they have, China has strategic partnerships like it does with Iran, with Saudi Arabia. Okay, Russia and China have very deep relations with many of the Gulf countries. So who's going to clean up this mess after Iran does its thing and Israel and the Americans? It will probably be the Russians and Chinese who try to negotiate as intermediaries between Gulf partners and Iran. And I'm going to come to why I think that will come to pass in a second. So y'all need to understand the abstention is not to insult, because it was all the Gulf countries, the entire GCC, that basically put forth this resolution. All right. So in order not to offend their friends and be able to keep that role of intermediary, the Russians and Chinese abstained. This is my reading of it. But what I was quoting from is, y'all can all go look, securitycouncilreport.org. It reports on, gives background color and information on every single Security Council resolution that is up for a vote. Okay, again, securitycouncilreport.org. Go check it out yourselves. The other point, and by the way, in the direct aftermath, Russia's UN envoy, Ambassador Nebenzia, said very clearly, or he actually, I think he said it during the UNSC meeting. He said Tehran has repeatedly stressed its actions target U.S. military facilities, not countries in the region, and that these facilities, this is the Russian envoy speaking, are legitimate targets within Iran's right to defense under Article 51 of the UN Charter. The Russians and Chinese, again, cleaving to and quoting international law, while the others are just ramming through resolutions, arm twisting, and a lot of Gulf money. And that's how things get done at the UN Security Council, and have been done for several decades now, since the Cold War ended and the Soviet Union lost. Let's be honest about that. I do want to talk about, unless y'all want to get into something there, because I've been talking a lot. If there's something y'all want to bring up, let's do that. I'll go back.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know if I don't think Karim has much of an opinion of this left. I don't want to speak for you, but if you do, please chime in. My view on it is just.
I have one sentence.
I have also one sentence. My sentence is: this is a sobering reminder of how international politics work, truly. And we had one in November with the Gaza Board of Peace. Now we are getting another one with this resolution. I don't really have much more to say. What do you think, Karim?
No, what happened is one more fact that I can add to my banks, to my bank of
what?
Of saying that they did nothing to Iran.
To help Iran?
Yeah.
Iran.
Whatever.
The Karim will die on this hill. He will die on this hill.
He can.
And I respect him for it.
No. It's fine. It's fine. Respect it when it shows to have legs. Either his arguments have legs or mine. We'll see. We all have to wait for this. But I did want to say that one of the members who was a co-sponsor of this is Oman. Oman is a member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, a GCC member, but it's been making different soundings. And this is really important. Okay. I'm going to tell you why in a second. Oman, the foreign minister of Oman made a statement, okay? Sayed Badr al-Busaidi, okay? He's the one who came out and said negotiations are going great just before the Americans launched the attack, okay? This Omani foreign minister has also come out now and said things that are very untraditional, and unprecedented. He has said that this war is not just about Iran. The war on Iran is meant to block a Palestinian state and reshape the entire region, meaning there is other intent behind this war. That and to push the normalization agenda between Israel and Arab states. He said that Oman will not join the Board of Peace. Was it Malaysia or Indonesia, I think, that stepped out of the Board of Peace in the last week?
Indonesia.
Yeah. And he said Oman will not normalize relations with Israel. So a very, very different tone from the rest of the other 5 GCC members. Okay. Al-Busaidi warned that the US and Israeli attacks on Iran are part of a dangerous chain of violations that could undermine the legal framework that has provided regional stability for decades. So he's pointing out who the instigators are and where the violations of law occurred. Okay. And then he says Oman is seeking to stop the war and return to diplomacy. Of course, warning about the normal things that higher oil prices and major supply chain disruptions could happen globally if we don't. He says, so Al-Busaidi says something really interesting here, and it's something we've talked about on this show before. He said the war may end soon, but he called, nonetheless, for reconsidering Persian Gulf security strategies, in advance of this. And this is what I've been saying. This is where you need more impartial countries, definitely not the US, not the UK, not France, not Germany, but a Russia and China that have friendships and deep economic ties and deep geopolitical common interests with most of the GCC countries, right? Because who then could broker a Persian Gulf security architecture without the presence of US bases there and provide guarantees because they have equidistant relations with all sides, right? What for decades you'd see in American headlines, can the US really be viewed as an honest broker, right? They would present itself as an honest broker, but never was. And so in this case, Oman is saying that's what we need. The Omani foreign minister is saying we need to reconsider Gulf security strategies. That is a hint that he understands, at least, that the American military presence in the Gulf is not likely to, continue, and that there is awareness among his peers in the other GCC states that this may be a reality, but nobody wants to address quite yet.
I mean, he's saying the Gulf needs to prepare for worst case scenarios. And just to put these things into context, first of all, his statements were given to editors of several Omani newspapers. I believe it was yesterday. This was also just a few hours after the alleged Iranian drone attack on the fuel depots, which I called it a false flag from the moment I saw it, because it honestly makes no sense. Later in the day, the Iranians denied responsibility, and they again, said that this was likely a false flag attack by the Israelis and the US. And just one last thing, because I want to hear Karim's thoughts about Al-Busaidi's comments. In November, this man, the same, official, Omani foreign minister, he spoke in front of, I want to say it was the GCC also, like a GCC meeting. And he very plainly said, and we put his comments here back then in the podcast, he said, we have recognized for decades that Iran is not the source of instability in the region, that it is, in fact, Israel. And then, just we're going to paraphrase what he said, essentially, is like, the Gaza genocide has proven this to be a fact, and of course the attacks in Qatar, in Doha, etc. So Oman, like I said, very interesting comments coming right after this, false flag attack on their depots, on their fuel depots, and also, a few months after these other comments. Karim, what do you make of Oman's position, and in particular the comments of Al-Busaidy?
Oman position is neutral, as they are always aware. And I don't think it has any value in the current situation, because you are in war, we are not in peace. The role of Oman is usually during peace times, making mediation between two countries, And currently, it's clear from the Iranian statements and officials that are speaking, they are saying they don't want to end the war now. There is no negotiation with the Americans or the Israelis, of course. And we saw Trump today. He started to hint that the war is not over yet.
Again,
Although,
I mean,
few hours ago, he said that this war should be fast and blah, blah, blah. But now he's saying, no, he's taking his time. It might take 3 hours. Three weeks or more. Of course, all of these are usually leaked through Axios. They prepare the masses, and then he comes out and say them.
Yeah, no, I think, actually the question about Oman's position right now, and, to the point that Sharmin was trying to make, this is also kind of like a sign of things to come, right? And like as many people in the comments have pointed out, Oman has always been, like the diplomat has always been like the mediator, and we saw it too, right?
Because people maybe are not aware of Oman. Oman had no issue regarding normalization, and Netanyahu visited Oman, and he was received very well. So I don't trust Oman.
You don't trust Oman very much. I mean,
no.
I mean, I think what we can all agree on is that regardless of the outcome, this war is going to be, a before and after moment. Like the Gulf in particular is never going to be the same place again. And just look at Dubai. Have you seen the images of the airport? Have you seen the images of the reports that a British citizen is facing jail time because he shared footage, I think, of one of the drone strikes? And influencers or just like the people who made Dubai, whatever it was, saying we are never coming back. Dubai is over. Dubai is done for what it is. And now you have to expand that to encompass the entirety of the Gulf and the myth of U.S. defense systems, because, well, that's over.
Yeah, if any of our viewers are in Dubai, always it'd be great for you to leave your comments, as long as you're not a paid influencer. We'd love to hear your comments of how things are there. I imagine it's quiet and people are staying indoors largely.
It looks empty. It looks empty, like the images coming out.
Yeah, today I had 2 lengthy phone calls with 2 of my friends that are in Dubai. They told me where they are. They're barely hearing bombardments or strikes. But they both told me the same, is that everybody is afraid that there will be food shortage. My friend told me today that usually if you go to restaurants which are still open, most of them are still open, he said there is no fruits, there is no vegetables there. Everybody is buying canned food, and he also, of course, bought water and canned food. And we have to know that countries such as the UAE, where Dubai is and Abu Dhabi is, these countries are Sahara, they are deserts, and the surrounding countries are also desert. And there is no choice for them but to import from the sea, and that's what they are not able to do currently. And by time they will really suffer. And of course, my friend told me what happened to him regarding he preferred to come to Lebanon than staying there in Dubai, and they canceled his ticket. He told me at the beginning when he felt something will happen, his ticket was around $400, and now they canceled it and they forced him to buy a new one, and now it's $1,000. So these stuff are happening in Dubai.
I mean, I think the Strait of Hormuz closure is, it's very recent that it's happened, and it's being enforced by the Iranians. We saw, was it an American oil tanker that was blown up last night? And then the 3 ships we mentioned yesterday, but I heard that a Bangladeshi ship had been let through, so it's not just Chinese ships, that India had made requests to let ships through. Now, I think, I don't know what the response is to that, but I think as this continues, Iran will keep the pressure on oil and gas movements through the strait, but will, unlike the Americans and their allies, will allow for genuine humanitarian aid to pass. I think we will see this. We will learn how, if you're going to besiege for military reasons, you have to put civilians at the forefront as well, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that will change over a while. But yeah, we've all been hearing about the food shortages, and the big worry in these nations is water shortages that could come.
Completely. I'm sorry, I was completely distracted for a second because I'm reading the speech from Mojtaba Khamenei, the new supreme leader. Maybe we
Yeah,
can
let's
discuss
go
that
there.
because he issued his first speech as supreme leader of Iran, in which he actually has some very beautiful lines about his dad in particular. But let's focus on the political decisions. He hold on. I had it here. He confirmed that they will continue, of course, to impose this blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, and called it a primary lever, hinting at opening new unconventional fronts where the enemy is vulnerable. He also praised Yemen, Hezbollah, and the Iraqi resistance, the Hashd al-Shabi. He also vowed justice and revenge, not just for his father, but for every citizen killed. I think Iran right now already surpassed the 2,000 people killed since the start of the U.S.-Israeli war. In particular, he highlighted the deliberate crime of the Shajareh Tayyiba school in Minav. He also confirmed, and this is something that Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian mentioned yesterday, that Iran will seek compensation from the enemy's assets or to destroy them to an equal value if they refuse to pay for damages caused by this unprovoked war. He also issued a warning to the 15 neighboring countries, close any foreign military bases used to attack Iran immediately. He also said that Iran will continue to attack U.S. bases if they continue to remain active, and then he ordered free medical care for the wounded and state-funded compensation for private property damage. The compensation, they are seeking compensation or instead destroying. No, wait. Seeking compensation from the enemy's assets or to destroy them to an equal value. What an interesting statement. What do you guys think this means exactly?
It means that the West that has stolen and frozen assets for anyone they feel like freezing and stealing from. Venezuela's gold, Russian, billions of dollars of Russian bank accounts, right? What they do left, right, and center, that Iran will reciprocate. I am telling you, this one guy, think tanker in Iran, I've told the story before, but I have to again, that I met in Iran. He is close to the IRGC think tank, but a very well-respected individual, analyst. He said to me that, look, we don't have to do anything new. We can just copy the Americans. If the Americans say we're going to go to the Indian Ocean to fight piracy and counterterrorism, well, then we can go to the Indian Ocean, right? The Iranian Navy can now go to the Indian Ocean because we're fighting piracy and counterterrorism as well, right? And he says, that's it. And you see the reason Iran can conduct this kind of war in early 2026 is because of the last 2 decades of America laying the path forward for completely ignoring international law, completely, their behavior. And so the new Iran's new supreme leader is saying, well, we're just going to do the same. We're going to confiscate, we're going to freeze, we're going to destroy in kind. So either pay up or have your stuff destroyed, and you don't have to pay up anyways. I think that's the right tack to take with the Americans. I really do. I feel like this Iranian war is what the Pentagon calls a full spectrum warfare, right? Full spectrum, energy, military, cyber, economic, financial, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Americans invented it. Why shouldn't the Iranians follow? I think it's just, I don't know. I feel like I'm finding things they're saying funny, funny because nobody's dared say these things before. Do you know?
No, I see what you mean. We have a super chat, Karim, asking a question. Actually, maybe we can put it on screen. This is thank you so much, Schiffer Pro, for your super chat. Also, thank you to we had a couple also earlier in the program. He's asking, what do we think about Professor Jiang's predictions that both Iran and the U.S. will be destroyed after this war as sacrificial lambs for Israel and Pax Judaica? To be honest, I've heard this particular theory from him, and from everything I have seen over the past 3 or so years, in particular since the start of the genocide in Gaza, it completely tracks. It completely tracks. It does feel like Israel is seeking to essentially have the US and Iran destroy each other and take the Gulf countries with them, because Israel wants to be the hegemon. And the whole idea of Pax Judaica, actually, I would point to you guys to go to our website at thecradle.co and look for our articles on the Pax Silica agreement and see how kind of everything does actually line up. So that's my answer to that question.
I will say I do watch Professor Zhang's videos. I find it interesting, just as an analyst myself. Like I find the way he thinks interesting. He obviously reads about and is very well versed on current events as well as historic ones. Mm-hmm. But I will say, and this is something that afflicts all analysts, I don't care how good they are across the board, is your analysis is only ever right if you pick the 3 or 4 or 5 right things to be looking at. There's 1,000 points of information, and you have to understand the 3 or 4 or 5 salient ones that are ultimately going to impact what a future result will be. And then there's always black swans, okay, and unforeseen events, correct? On the Pax Judaica, I don't really understand it very much. How does he predict an Iranian victory, yet Pax Judaica? I don't see it. I would analyze it differently. I would say that let's talk about, what people are talking about, the Epstein class, very powerful, Zionist money, etc. I would say that if you look at the moneyed Jews, you have those who were more sort of on the globalist train and others that are fully on the Zionist train. And those two have been more or less the same for a long time. But if Israel just becomes, a stub of what it was, and the perception, right? Perception being 100% of politics, of Israel's, qualitative everything just dissipates, then you will have those people, the globalists, move on. And the globalists in this case, I mean capital, okay? Capital only cares about capital. If Israel's not making the cut, capital moves elsewhere. So I don't think Professor Zhang is right in this, but I don't knock him either. I really don't, because he has some really good train of thoughts that make a lot of sense.
I think he, I don't think he actually has ever presented himself as being, this is what's going to happen, right? Like Nostradamus or something. What he's, is just kind of critical thinking and asking questions.
Correct.
And connecting the dots. So that's why I say, many of the things he says, in particular to this Pax Judaica idea, it actually tracks, especially once you consider AI and all of that question. Karim, are you a Professor Jiang fan? What do you think about his theory?
Yeah, I watched his, I think, I agree with him, but he has a misunderstanding of the region. If he had full understanding, he might change his mind in some things. And for instance, you have something called Yemen, you have something called the Iraqi resistance, and the historical stance of Iraq was not like this. Everything in Iraq is now artificial, and nobody knows how Iraq will be if everything stayed on the track. And for instance, the Americans leave Iraq or even become somehow weak, they can maintain Iraq as they did before. There's also Hezbollah role, and there is also the factor is that currently, it's not Iran. You have people in Iran, you have people in Iraq, you have people also in Syria, you have people even in Turkey, you have people in Lebanon and Yemen, and even people from the Gulf that feel that they are one against the Israelis and against the Americans. This is not an easy thing not to take in factor. And that's my opinion. But of course, the beginning of the war and how the Israelis acted and their goal, he's 100% correct. And I think that if there was a perfect plan, It's not now perfect because of Hezbollah, because everybody is astonished of what's happening in the border, including Israelis. And the Israelis said, "Yalla, let's go with the Americans. Let's bomb Iran and come back, bomb and come back, and we stop whenever we want." But now this is not the case. Hezbollah is a player in the region again, and not as many people thought, including me, that Hezbollah is nearly finished.
I want to just highlight something. First of all, hit that like button, everyone. I love that as soon as we brought up Professor Jiang, like a bunch of the commenters just went, he's CIA, he's a PSYOP, he's this and that. I love you guys. I love
No,
that.
no, no,
that
no.
you're
People,
that bold.
if you have a
Well,
Go
what-
ahead.
if you have enough knowledge in certain ways, you can predict and you can understand what might happen in the future.
Yeah, no, exactly. You know,
Yeah.
it's yeah. I think
But I mean,
Karim summed
I
it up.
don't know that he takes into consideration interests of states enough. I mean, you know what? All analysts my favorite analysts have been wrong at times. It's not an easy thing. You know, things change. But I do think it's a contradiction. His claim that Iran is winning and will win, and then to actually also talk about Pax Judaica, because if you want to think the sort of the Zionist movements, they just simply do not have the same footing in the multipolar world, despite how much people think they do, that they do in the existing unipolar world. And it's just not possible in my view. But anyways, let's move on.
Let's move on because there's something also that I know you want to talk about, Charmaine. Actually, let me just mention something quickly because I don't feel like this is something we need to dive into too much, but it's the cost of the war, right? The cost of the U.S. war.
Oh, yeah.
Which they already revealed that is $11.6 billion during the first 6 days. And as we have been having this discussion, I've had it on my screen open the Iran cost ticker, IranCostTicker.com, which as of this very moment says that since the strikes began, the war on Iran has cost $17,925,800,000 and is rising by $11,574 per second. This does not even account for the damage caused by Iran on radar systems, which already earlier this week we reported at the Cradle, I think it was around $6 billion just in the radars that were destroyed. And you know, there's been more radars destroyed since then. So well, US taxpayers, you have no universal health care, but you have this. And yeah, I don't know if you guys have any comments. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's just a drop in the bucket. I mean, you know, we're talking about entire military bases. We're talking about the expenditures, the massive amount of interceptors and Patriot missiles and Tomahawks. And, you know, every time they put a fighter jet in the air, it's like a cool million type of thing. You know, it's just on and on. It's hosting soldiers U.S. soldiers in another territory, right? In the first place, they have like, you know, hotel nights and food and everything. And I mean, the gas used, the fuel used for transporting things.
Yeah.
I mean, the costs
Fixing
are
the toilets.
fixing the toilets, you know, keeping their boats, their naval ships afloat. There's so many. And there's about 50,000 U.S. troops in the region before this started easily. Like, what are they thinking? I think that's a very, very low guesstimate. And even if they get 50 billion from Congress, which is what Trump asked for, he's going to have to suck dry that new 2026 defense budget, right? In order to make ends meet.
To get his $1.5 trillion dollars. There's also, you know, you just reminded me because there's been an obvious, very obvious, I mean, so transparent attempt by U.S. officials to manipulate markets, to manipulate the oil price, right? We saw earlier this week the claim that they had escorted a ship through the Strait of Hormuz and then immediately had to retract. We saw some tweet by the U.S. energy minister, I think, also making a claim about something about this. He also had to retract it. There's also the announcement yesterday that the U.S. is dipping into its strategic petroleum reserves to it's somewhere around 170 million barrels that they're going to release. I believe, I'm not actually sure if this is part of the 400 million that were announced by the IEA just yesterday as well, or if it's actually on top. First of all,
it's on top.
So first of all, the SPR was already depleted to historic lows by Joe Biden following the start of the Russia-Ukraine war, and it wasn't actually ever, refilled to where it's supposed to be. So that's of concern, one would think, right, for the U.S. government. Second of all, yesterday, I said it, 400 million barrels of oil equals 20 days of what would be lost by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. So you're still talking about maximum a month that they can buy, and Iran seems to have completely dig their heels in, and they're in it for the long run.
Agreed, 100%. I just want to point out some things to just, little side information. I think, Esteban, you had shared in the group an article in the British press that Brits and Special Forces base attacked by Iranian drone swarm with troops hurt. The British are saying, no British troops were hurt. But so this is an SAS base in, what is SAS? Special Forces?
Special base. Aerial Service, something about the air.
Yeah, SAS base in Iraq, a British base. But the UK is saying, no, American troops were hurt in that, and, not too badly. There is a broader range of targets that Iran is hitting. I think there's actually, I don't know, Karim, what do you think? You think there's any reason? Do you think there's any reason the Iranians can't hit whatever targets they want in Iraq?
They can hit wherever they want in the region and beyond, but the problem, they can't execute human damages or losses in their strikes. So, most of the buildings that are being hit, especially the ones that are further furthermore from the Gulf shores, meaning outside Qatar, Kuwait, and Bahrain, is very difficult for the Iranians to hit like soldiers, according to my observation, because they have the alarms and they have the early systems which give them enough time to get away. But for instance, if you fire a very fast missile or a drone that is moving very low besides the Gulf Sea, it might make it through the early system warnings and hit its target. And that's what happened in Kuwait and in other places.
So, but is it possible that there are a lot more U.S. troop casualties than we hearing? Because, these guys lie about everything. But the other thing is, I also understood in several things I read that because so many qualitative radar systems of the Americans and their allies have been hit, that the notification time of an incoming munition has shrunk down to, in some cases, to seconds.
In Israel, this is not the case. The early warning system is only maybe was reduced by 2 minutes or so.
Actually, I read that about Israel as well. So I don't know the answer to that.
No, it's wrong, yeah. In other places, especially in Qatar is still warning the early systems, and in Kuwait, they are still working. Of course, Iran targeted many places, and we know that, for instance, because the Koreans said it, we know it. And in other places, if we didn't hear the news, you will not know what's happening militarily. For instance, the Americans dismantled the radar in Korea, the Patriot radar, and now it's on its way, or maybe it arrived. We don't know if they used airplanes. We have no idea. And of course, Germany alone, as the Israelis said 3 days ago, they shipped 1,000 tons of ammunition and military related hardware. So we can't know that. But also we have there's a military fact about especially the Shahid drone. The Shahid drone is not one model. There's different models. For instance, there's a model that you have something like a radar attached to it, that it will bomb the radar even without you telling it to bomb a radar. Meaning you can send a swarm of Shahid drones, and they will alone find where are the radars and go hit them. And this was used in in Russia also. So I think by time, we don't know when the war will end, but I think still the Iranians need more time to make the Americans completely blind. And we have to know something, that also the Americans, they have radars in the skies, meaning they have airplanes with radars. And if the ground forces radars were damaged, they have radars in the air. I think what's still happening is because of the power of the United States. But if United States stopped, for instance, and Israel is alone, I think it will face a nightmare.
I just want to know what the hell British Special Forces, why do they have a base in Iraq today? Like, that's just astounding.
I think they always had.
No, but since 2020, all foreign forces out and the coalition is moving and the U.S. troops all moved to Erbil. This is insane to me. I always say that the really nefarious arms of the British everywhere across the region, oftentimes paving the way for an American or Israeli adventure. Always with the Israelis.
The Brits announced that
they're the ones who raised this Mohammed bin Zayed, okay, who became like the biggest Zion.
Shut up.
And they
100%.
Yes.
And they announced that that they carried out 265 defensive operations in the region. The Brits said it, they are not hiding.
No, they just go away, guys. And then
also countries that are helping, and people are not talking about them at all. We have Romania handed a base for the United States.
Well,
we have also Australia.
There, it's not like a base is going to be built overnight. Like, a lot.
Yeah, they handed a base to the United States.
Okay, what I'm saying is a lot of this is, just as you look at how the Americans are talking about the war, it's not just Trump. Okay, look at how the Americans in positions of power are talking about the energy crisis. They're trying to, manage perception. They're trying to manage narratives. They're trying to, they've affected oil prices just by a statement they've made.
Short-term pain for a long-term gain.
Exactly. I don't care what any of these countries do.
It was opposite.
From a statement to an actuality is, we don't ever know it's going to manifest. That's all I'm saying. I do want to point out something, since Karim, you brought up the
before Sharmeen, there's a question for you.
I also have a question for Karim, but let's go with.
Can I just say this one point before we do the questions? Because it's killing me. It's killing me.
Go ahead.
Today I was watching the news. Like, I never watch the TV news anymore, but I was watching the news, and I saw a video of South Korea's parliament approving a bill to invest $350 billion in the United States. Okay, this happened. Okay, the parliament bent over as the U.S. is pictured and videoed withdrawing the THAAD system and Patriots from Korea after warning Korea nonstop for years, okay, about the threat from its northern neighbor and the threat from China. Literally, the parliamentarians, let me just tell you, because I was in Korea just a few months ago, and I was there for like a month. And, I told you, like, it was less North Korea this year. It was more China. Okay, China's so scary. China's going to whatever. The Americans show that they've just lied. They've spent, they've lied to the South Koreans, because if there was an imminent threat of any kind to South Korea, they wouldn't be removing the THAADs and the Patriots. But here's the thing. Earlier on, this was over the tariffs, right? The South Koreans got hit with Trump tariffs. Okay, obnoxious numbers for an Asian ally, right? And so what happens is Trump basically says, you invest $500 billion in the United States and I'll lower your tariffs. And the South Koreans were like, but we can't even afford this. We won't have had, like, even during the IMF crisis, this is how it's going to hit us. We don't have that kind of money. So obviously they negotiated Trump style down to $350 billion. Okay. It's obnoxious. It is literally the government of South Korea, the elected parliamentarians bending over. I can tell you South Koreans will not be pleased at any of what they're seeing today.
Someone in the comments, James Tweedy, reminds us. Also, remember, ICE arrested all those South Koreans in Georgia setting up a Hyundai plant, and they sent them back. Yeah, we can't forget that. It was also approved
Yeah.
by bipartisan support. I mean, the entirety, both everyone approved it. Also, since you brought it up, Charmin, because it's worth mentioning. Karim, actually, I sent you. I tagged you in a link in our chat. That's the video of this one. Exactly.
Yeah, but we have a super chat.
Wait. Let me. Since we can go back to that. So just 1 second, Karim. Sorry, because when they put these batteries, South Korea essentially had to, more or less cut relations with China. Like China ended so much of their agreements. Tourism completely tanked because of these batteries that are now being disassembled, shipped to Israel, and the South Korean president saying it's a bad idea, we don't like it, but there's nothing we can do about it. So I just wanted to add that little.
I remember when the THAAD came with South Korea, and these grandmothers, Korean grandmothers, were like putting their bodies in front of like to prevent the THAAD from being based here, because the Korean grandmother understood, unlike the Gulf rulers, that having an American system there makes it a vulnerability for the state, makes it a target.
And makes it relations, freeze with China. Essentially, Karim, I'm sorry. You've been wanting to say about the super chat.
Yeah, we have a super chat. We have to read it.
Yes, we do.
Sharmin, what happened to the Praveen Swahani interview?
Oh, no. What, did you actually have to bring that up? It's not happening as of now. Okay, don't ask me why.
Well, thank you for the super chat. No, thank you for the super chat.
Why would you bring that up, Karim? Like, I've been so devastated
it's
about
a super chat, Charmin.
Who cares? Who cares?
No, we care. We care about your super chats.
Sorry, Charmin.
2 days over this, and then maybe he didn't connect that I was so devastated about this. Okay, fine. There's your answer. I have no idea.
Sorry for our viewers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep them coming because.
I'm scared to announce anything because it might not happen. But we have fingers crossed. We have Victor Gao on Tuesday. Go look him up, guys.
Guys, there's one question I wanted to ask Karim, because he brought up, when we were talking about Iran blinding the U.S. and Israel, etc.
Wait, can I say one more thing, just so super quickly? Larry Wilkinson, former chief of staff for Colin Powell when he was Secretary of State, is going to be with us tomorrow. We're going to have 2 back-to-back episodes of Rock the Cradle for y'all. And then we're going to have Dr. Fuad Izadi from Tehran University, who I think many people will have been seeing around. Very, very interesting analyst. So you'll have the Iran story and you will have the American story tomorrow, all at Rock the Cradle. Check it out.
Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't. Now, finally, Karim, I want to ask you a question, because I've been seeing these reports for the past several hours. Some people brought it up in the comments as well. Did the IRGC say that U.S. tech companies or like their assets in the region would also become targets? Because when we talk about the U.S. also has, satellites and etc., they are also have the support of every big tech company, from what is it called, SpaceX to Meta to whatever else, Alphabet. Did the IRGC say this?
The IRGC issued a warning for the United States, and specifically Trump, because he said that they can destroy the electricity in Iran. And afterwards, the Iranians said that we also will make the full region go dark. And also, they said that they will start to target Western assets, and of course specifically American assets in the region, following the bombing of a bank in Iran.
Okay,
these are the official statements.
Thank you for that clarification. We have another super chat, by the way, from the same person, from F Chow 1619. Thank you very much. So everyone go to need. I think we can wrap it up for today, guys. We've covered most of the important things today. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Karim. Thank you to Charmin. Please make sure to hit that like button if you haven't yet. It is really very important to fight against this algorithm, to get this video out to more viewers, to get more subscribers. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. And of course, in the description below, you can find a link to our Patreon page where you can go and for as little as $5 a month, become a Patreon subscriber, a direct supporter of the Cradle. We want to give, of course, a special thanks to all of those of you who have become patrons already. It really means the world to us, and we hope to continue on the way to our year-end goal. So yeah, please, if it's possible, consider becoming a patron.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
West Asia is always on the map, but rarely in its own voice. This region has been narrated by others for far too long. That's why the Cradle exists, to report from the region, not to speak over it.
Together, the United States
To tell stories with depth, precision, and no editorial leash. Because West Asia is more than just a theater of war. It's the corridor between continents, the energy artery of the world, the cradle of civilization. We don't take government orders. We don't serve corporate boards. We serve clarity, rarity, and rawness, no matter the risk. So if you believe this region deserves better than spin, support the people doing the legwork. Donate. Keep the Cradle independent.